Whew, I almost tripped on that one. What's going on, everybody? It's a new day, new deck profile, and we got 3 new things also. We got a new haircut, new milestone, and deck profile, as I said. I just want to thank everybody out there who's been watching these videos and has helped me get to over 100 subscribers now. It really means a lot to me. I really appreciate the fact that you guys appreciate these deck profiles and take my, I guess my opinion on these decks and being able to at least just modify it, use it for your own, and just, you know, appreciate it for what it is. If you guys have anything that you guys would like me to do, like as like a video, just let me know in like the comment section. Whether it be like a live duel, whether it be deck analysis. I could even do like a deck tour because I have like, I don't know, like 20 decks just sitting around, and I could just give you guys an idea of like what I do have. But I'm currently trying to plan out for a 100 subscriber video. It is kind of difficult because I don't know what to make yet. I'm thinking about a deck tour, but it could be other things. It could be a surprise, but let's get past that for right now. Today we're going to move into the deck profile. Today's deck profile is something that I've been building for the last, I'd say, year and a half. I've been waiting a long time to finish the deck up, and recently I could finally complete it. And that actually is Fossil Adamancipators. Fossils are really interesting in the fact that your whole deck revolves around Fossil Fusion. Fossil Fusion being able to use yours and your opponent's graveyard as fusion material for fossil monsters, whether it be Skull Geos or Skull Convoy or Skull King. All these boss monsters use different levels based upon what you fusion off of. If you banish like a level 6 or higher and one rock monster from your graveyard, then you're able to summon out like a Skull Buggy or whatever the one is. But basically, fossils just use the both graveyards, and it matters on levels on what you can summon, but they can also be used as extenders, especially in Adamancipators, because we actually lost the Prank Kids engine in Roxy's by the ban list of the 2022, and the fact that we lost Meow Meow Moo. Because now we can't use the Meow Meow Moo plus the Doodle Doodle Doo to be able to link climb up into Appaloosa anymore, so that means we can cut 2 extra deck cards, which is the Meow Meow Moo and the Doodle Doodle Doo, and then we're able to cut 4 main deck cards, which is the 3 Roxys and the 1 Dropsies, which means now we can clear out a little bit more space and being able to put in more of our Fossil Engine stuff, which is pretty strong right now. It's pretty cool because of the fact that you have like Miracle Rupture to dump Weathering Soldier to the graveyard. You have a Rock Band Xeno Guitar if it gets banished either off of like a Gaia Plate, or if you use it for Fossil Fusion, then you can dump the Weathering Soldier, or you can dump the new Shell Knight to be able to add Gaia Plate, or different things like that. It's really cool. There's a lot of different plays. Has actually pretty good going second potential because Fossil Fusion is not a once per turn where it fusions. So you can keep on fusing these big boss monsters if your opponent has high level monsters in the graveyard, or you can fuse out into smaller ones to be able to get your play started with like a Gallant Granite to search out your Adamancipator Researcher, or a Seeker, or the Analyzer. That was what the last one was. But besides that, I hope you guys enjoy this deck profile. Just let me know in the comment section what you guys would like to see next. I have quite a few decks I could show off. I just would like to have an idea of what you guys would possibly see for a 100 subscriber video. I really appreciate your opinions. I comment sometimes on the comment section also. I reply to you guys, and I read all the comments, and I really appreciate all you guys have been saying to me, and just the continued support of this channel. And let's get right into it. Starting off with, we're going to start with 1 Shell Knight, and we're going to run 2 Weathering Soldier and 3 Flint Cracker. This is our Fossil Monster package. Shell Knight is not necessary in this deck profile per se. I like running it because sometimes you might have a send to graveyard for like a rock monster, and sometimes you want to be able to OTK your opponent if you're going second. And what Shell Knight allows us to do is it says when this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect or destroyed by battle, add 1 level 8 rock monster from your deck to your hand, or if Fossil Fusion's in your graveyard, you can special summon it instead. For the rest of this turn, you cannot activate cards or effects of the cards with the same name as that card. So unfortunately, you can't really add something that will allow you to get advantage. If, like, let's say if Block Dragon was unbanned, this could add Block Dragon, which would be really strong, but unfortunately it isn't. and you wouldn't even be able to activate Block Dragon's effect that turn. But instead what we do add is we can add a Gaia Plate. Gaia Plate says that you can special summon this card by removing from play any 2 rock-type monsters in your graveyard. During standby phase, remove from play 1 rock-type monster from your graveyard, or send this card to the graveyard. Have the attack and any defenses of any monster that battles with this card. So it turns out that this is not an activation to special summon. You special summon it like a Sidra just by banishing 2, which means that you can actually summon the Gaia Plate even if you add it off the Shell Knight. And the battle effect where it battles in halves does not activate. It's a passive activation in the sense that if you just battle, it just halves it. So Gaia Plate is not really affected by the restriction of Shell Knight, so if we dump like a Shell Knight to the graveyard, we can actually add Gaia Plate, and Gaia Plate is effectively a 5600 attack point monster and can beat over most monsters in the game unless they're unaffected by card effects or something. So you can run over like Barone, or you can run over Dragoon even, because it would just have the attack, which is really strong. I love the card. It's really interesting. I'm glad I picked up the ultis when it was cheap. I think I picked this up when it was like $5 and they went up after the support came out, let's put it that way. So that's kind of like our fossil package, and Gaia Plate's included in it because I'm pretty sure he was one of Crocodile's monsters in the anime, but I may be wrong. I may be misremembering. It's been so long since I watched it. But let's get on to our Adamancipator package. We're going to be running 2 Dragite, kind of standard. You can summon it off of your Adamancipators to draw a card, of course. It's alright. You kind of have to wait until the new support comes out. I forget what it is. It comes out in Power of the Elements. It's a water type rock. If you discard it, you get an extra normal summon, and if you have a water and a earth type rock on the field, then you can special summon it from your graveyard, which is pretty good when you pair it up with the Dragite. But that's kind of a mill target. It's alright. Usually you want to mill off, or not mill, you want to summon off the Flint Cragger. Because Flint Cragger is kind of nutty in the sense that Flint Cragger will allow you to add the Fossil Fusion by discarding a card. You discard a card, and then you get to basically send like any Fossil Fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, and then that's about it. You basically will send Skullgar, and then you banish Skullgar to add Fossil Fusion, or you can send Skullbuggy if you have Fossil Fusion, banish that to add a monster that mentions Fossil Fusion, which would be like a Weathering Soldier or the Shell Knight. Weather Soldier, if it's sent to the graveyard, then you're able to add a Fossil Fusion or a card that mentions it, which is basically like all the fossil stuff, which is really strong. Flint Cragger is also great because it's a level 3, and if you have small Adamancipators like a Researcher, you can basically just Synchro into a Naturia Beast, and most decks in this format die to Nat Beast. Let's put it simply that way. I'm pretty sure that if you have a Nat Beast on the field and you're running against like a Despia deck, they're gonna cry unless they have like the specific removal for Nat Beast, which would be like a Droplets, but it has to be Droplets or Dark Ruler, otherwise they're kind of out of luck to say the least. But we're gonna be running 3 Researcher, 3 Analyzer, and we're gonna be running 3 Seeker. This is like the standard package for Adamancipators. You want to run 3 of each, of course, in this deck because you just want to see Adamancipators as much as you can. Researcher being the worst Adamancipator that you can see going first because it doesn't special summon itself. It's kind of rough, but in the worst case scenario, if you open up like a Researcher or, if you open up Analyzer, sorry, I've been talking about Analyzer this whole time, and a Seeker, then you can just normal summon the Analyzer, special Seeker, and then you have at least 2 plays that you can go into if one gets stopped, which is pretty good. Of course, your best opener is having a Researcher because Researcher just special summons itself off of any rock. So if you have like a Dragite, or if you have like any of these, if you have Analyzer, normal Analyzer, special Researcher, then you get special Seeker, go onto your Adamancipator plays, and then hope that you hit Flint Cragger, which you most likely will, and then you just do your fossil stuff, and that's pretty much it. Adamancipators are the best part of this deck in my opinion. Best synchro spam, I would say, at the moment, besides Sword Soul. It's just rough because sometimes you might have a little bit of a bricky hand and not be able to play through certain things. That's why we kind of want to go first and hope that we see our starters and the extenders. So that covers our Adamancipator lineup. Now we're going to go into our Kawakimeru lineup. We're going to be running 3 Supplier, and we're going to be running 2 Guardian. Supplier being an extender. If a face-up rock monster we control is sent to the graveyard, it will special summon itself, and then it can add a guardian, which is kind of good. I only like 2 guardian in this build because in the past, I know that we used to run 3 with Adamancipators, I believe, because what you would do is you would normal guardian special the researcher, and then you'd basically have protection for your researcher at least from 1 hand trap. But at this point, you don't see researcher enough in my opinion, so running 2 instead is fine as an extender and just to add off of the guardian or the supplier. And if you happen to have a hand that has like guardian plus researcher, then you're all the better for it. But you don't really want to see guardian and then like another card that's not like a researcher, because that's kind of like a hard brick because you don't have any other way to get your monsters out until the new monster from Power of the Elements comes out. That's the little like rock turtle, and then this will be a lot better, and you would probably bump this up to 3. Now we're going to get off into like the kind of like one of monsters and like the extenders. We're going to run like 1 Revival Golem, and we're going to run 1 Tackle Crusader. Revival can be sent off of Rock Band Xenoguitar. If it's banished, it can also be sent off of Miracle Rupture in order to special summon itself back out and get a level 4 extender, allowing us to be able to make Gallant Granite more easy. And then Tackle Crusader also is kind of similar. It's kind of a board breaking card that you can use off of Miracle Rupture if you have your extenders in your hand. If it's sent to the graveyard, you can basically target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and change it to face down, or target 1 face-up spell your opponent controls and return that target to the hand. And then your opponent cannot activate cards with the same name as the card returned to their hand by this effect. Tackle Crusader is pretty cool. Used to run multiple of these. I don't think it's that great off a mill anymore because you want to mill your Flint Cragger as much as possible, but you're still going to run these 2 for Miracle Rupture targets, and also if you just have to go like second, it's great having the Tackle Crusader going second. Other than these, we're going to be running 2 Doki Doki. 2 is better than 3 in my opinion because it's kind of like a soft brick and also discards for cost of special summon, so it's kind of like an Ash bait. You don't want to discard as much. Unfortunately, it will not trigger Weathering Soldier because it discards as cost, which is the only problem that I have with the card currently. Besides that, it's pretty good to be able to dump like a Revival Golem because, for example, like let's say we have Tackle Crusader and Doki Doki. What you can do is you can normal Doki Doki, send dump Tackle Crusader, and since if it's sent to the graveyard, flip one of their monsters face down, you get the special summon, and you can summon like a Analyzer, which is pretty good. I still think Doki Doki is better at 2 than 3 because you don't want to see it a lot. It's like a decent Excavate, but besides that, it's not too great. And then to finish off our monster lineup, we're going to be running 3 Rock Band Xenoguitar. Xenoguitar is like one of the core of the deck. It says if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a rock monster in your graveyard except Rock Band Xenoguitar, add it to your hand, then place 1 card from your hand on top of the deck. So it allows you to at least like stack Adamancipators if you have to, but the more important effect that we're worried about is the fact that it says if this card is banished from the field or graveyard, you can send 1 rock monster from your deck to your graveyard. So it's another foolish burial for a rock, which can trigger our Weathering Soldier, it can trigger a Revival Golem, it can trigger Tackle Crusader, and it can also trigger our Shell Knight, which is pretty good in this deck. You'll be banishing quite a bit to say the least. Because you have Fossil Fusion. Fossil Fusion banishes so you can Fusion Summon. And we're running enough ways to get into Fossil Fusion that you're definitely going to see Rock Band Xenoguitar as a mill target. Then you're going to synchro it off for like a Rabtite, and then you'll be able to banish it and have crazy extension, which is great in this deck. I love Rock Band Xenoguitar. You can also use a Gaia Plate if you hard draw it and be able to just banish the Xenoguitar off of that, and it will actually trigger it also. But that finishes our monster lineup. Now we're going to run off into the spells. We're not running any traps in this deck, so we're just going to go off into the spells. We're going to be running 3 Fossil Fusion. I've seen other people say like 2 is better, but I actually like having the 3 because it's not a once per turn, and also if you open the Fossil Fusion, then you can use like your sends for other things like extenders, and then you can also use like your Flint Cragger to not search the Fossil Fusion and instead search Time Stream, which is kind of important in this deck. Time Stream being like a way that you can rank up on level 1 to be able to go into like a Skull King, which is kind of good. I like having Time Stream because it actually gives us a lot of follow through to say the least. We're also going to be running 3 Miracle Rupture. Miracle Rupture is a great card because it sends one level 4 or lower rock monster from your deck to the graveyard. Then if Fossil Fusion to your graveyard, you can draw one. So if you Fossil Fusion at the start of the turn on, like, let's say you're going second, and you normal Doki Doki, discard, gets Ash, fine. Fossil Fusion with your discard in their graveyard, great. Now you get to have like a Skullbone on the field. Then what you can do is you can Miracle Rupture going for a Shell Knight if you want to add Gaia Plate, or Rock Band Xeno Guitar if you want to get like something back to your hand. And then what you can do is you get the Foolish Burial, or you can even send Revival Golem and special summon that, and then you have 2 level 4s going to Gallant Granite and continue to play. Then you can basically get that going, and then you get a free draw, which is great. Miracle Rupture, unfortunately, is a hard once per turn, but we still run 3 in the deck because we want to see as many Foolish Burials as possible that are on theme. I don't run Foolish Burial because that would actually be way too much. I think the Miracle Rupture is more than enough along with our monsters. We're also going to run double Time Stream. Time Stream is a little bit controversial because it is a brick, unfortunately, if you don't open your starters. However, if you open your starters, Time Stream allows your hands to be a lot more explosive. And of course, you only run 2 because you can add the second off of the Skullbone, which is pretty good. If you open like Fossil Fusion, Time Stream, or a way to Fossil Fusion like Miracle Rupture plus Time Stream, and then like a Researcher, your hands are really good. You have ways to play through certain things, you have good extenders, and then you just kind of play from there, and it's extremely strong. And to finish off our spells, we're going to be running 3 Adamancipator Signs. Signs being a non-once per turn Monster Reborn for rocks, which is really strong, especially because of the fact that if you special summon an Adamancipator monster by the effect of Signs, what you can do is you can take 1 level 4 or lower rock monster from your deck and place it on top of your deck. So what you can do is you can actually stack a Flint Cracker and get your plays going if you Monster Reborn a Adamancipator that you dumped off of like Doki Doki that was interrupted, which is strong and gives us a lot of playthrough with that. But these are all the spells, and that actually finishes up the main deck. So we're going to get off into the extra deck in a second. To start off our extra deck, we're going to be running our Fossil package, which is going to be 1 Skull Buggy, which is a new addition from Ghost from the Past 2. We're going to be running 1 Skullgar, 1 Skullbone. These are our 3 level 4 Fossil Fusion monsters. They're pretty easy to summon. Skullbone requiring 1 rock monster and 1 level 4 or lower monster. Skullgar requiring 1 rock monster and 1 level 4 or lower monster from your opponent's graveyard. But we never really summon Skullgar by its fusion effects. We just dump it off of Flint Cracker. Or we can summon it into Skull Buggy, which is 1 rock monster in your graveyard plus 1 level 4 or lower monster. So each of these has like a different summoning requirement that's slightly different. This requiring a rock monster in your graveyard and a level 4 monster. This one requiring a rock monster and a level 4 or lower. And this one requiring a rock monster and a level 4 or lower from your opponent's graveyard. So each of the Fossil Fusions have a different way of summoning slightly, and it depends. These ones you won't usually hard summon. If anything, what you could do is like Fusion Skullbone as a level 4 extender. Usually that's what you'll do because it's the easiest to summon. You send either Skullgar or Skull Buggy off of the Flint Cracker as to get its effect. Either you send the Skull Buggy if you want to add a monster that mentions Fossil Fusion, or you send Skullgar if you want to add the Fossil Fusion, which is pretty good to start your plays if you need to. And of course, this all relies on Flint Cracker, which is like the keystone of this Fossil deck now. So these are all the small Fossil Fusion monsters. We're going to be running a Skull Wagon, Fossil Machine Skull Wagon, and a Skull Knight. These are our level 6 fusion monsters. Skull Knight requiring a rock monster and a level 5 or 6 monster, and then Skull Wagon requiring a rock monster from our graveyard and a level 5 or 6 monster. You usually will time stream up these, and time streaming them up basically does different effects. So if we have Skullbone and time stream the Skullbone, what we can do then is it will go into either Skull Knight or a Skull Wagon. We can banish Skullbone for another time stream, and then we can time stream up these into our big boss monsters. And when these are in the graveyard, they get effects. Skull Knight being a banish from graveyard and pop a card on the field, or target a monster on the field and pop it. And Skull Wagon being a spell and trap removal, which is pretty good. The other effects don't really come up that much. Skull Wagon can attack twice, and if it destroys a monster by battle, you can inflict 800 damage to your opponent, but it's only 1700 attack, so it's like very weak. Skull Knight being 2400 attack, it's not as bad. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing damage, and when this card destroys a monster by battle, you can activate this effect. You can make a second attack in a row. So this can kind of clear boards. It's better because it's 2400. You can clear smaller monsters, but you never usually actually use the battle effects, to say the least. You just use the graveyard effects. I also forgot to mention earlier on Fossil Fusion. So Fossil Fusion also has an interesting effect where it says that you can fusion summon one Fossil Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from any of the graveyards, except materials with specific graveyard requirements listed. And then it says, if you banish monsters from both graveyards, neither player can target that special summon monster with monster effects. So it gives you like targeting protection from special summon monsters, which is actually kind of important. So they can't pop you with Barone. They can't bounce with Unicorn and stuff like that. It's kind of cool. And then also this says that if a face-up Fossil Fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or card effect while this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card from your graveyard back to your hand, so it allows you to keep on recycling it, which is pretty crazy in my opinion. That's why I really like the Fossil Fusion. I think this package makes the Adamancipator's deck much, much more resilient in this format. But to get back onto our fossil monsters, we're going to go into the bosses. We're going to run one Fossil Machine Skull Convoy, one Fossil Dragon Skull Geos, and one Fossil Warrior Skull King. Skull Convoy is the newest monster that came out from Ghost from the Past 2, which was an import. What it says is it must first be special summoned with Fossil Fusion. While you control this fusion summon card, all monsters your opponent control loses attack equal to their original defense. It's 2100 attack, but like if a monster has 3k attack and then like 2500 defense, they become 500 attack. This thing can just run over it. Not to mention the fact that this card can make up to 3 attacks on monsters during each battle phase. And when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. So it's kind of like a mini UCT in a sense, which is kind of funny because of course it's like a fossil. So it might be UCT's bones, which is kind of funny in my opinion. But besides that, we're also running the Fossil Dragon. What it says is, before damage calc, if this card battles an opponent's monsters, you can switch the current attack and defense of the opponent's monster until the end of the damage step. If this card attacks the defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. And then if this fusion summon card battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage it inflicts to your opponent is doubled. And this thing is 3500 attack, which is kind of big. If it has like 0 defense, then you're taking 7k, which is kind of nuts. And then we're also running a Skull King. Skull King is a little bit, it's eh. You can use it off of Time Stream, which is kind of a good going first play. What it says is that this card can make a second attack during each battle phase, with it being 2800 attack. If this card attacks the defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. And then during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, discard one card, and if you do, special summon that monster to your field. So it steals a monster from their graveyard, prevents certain decks from going off. Unfortunately, if somebody banishes as like a cost, like a Water Enchantress, it doesn't really do much. But it also gives you the ability to just kind of like get through certain things, I'd say. Like you can steal a DPE with this, but usually you won't have to, I wouldn't say that happens that often. I still like it though. It just kind of completes the fossil lineup. We're basically running one of every fossil monster in the game, like all the fossil fusions, because each one has its own certain niches and allows us to at least OTK or extend or go first. So that's our Fossil Fusion lineup actually. Now we're going to get off into the other cards. We're going to be running one Gallant Granite. I don't need to explain this card. It's one of the best rank 4 cards for rocks. Just adds a rock from your deck to your hand, allows you to get Researcher, Analyzer, Seeker, any of the other rock monsters that you could possibly want to add. Really easy to make, just 2 level 4s. You can get that out pretty easily in this deck, I'd say. Yeah, I can't really say more about it. We're going to be running one Boardload Savage Dragon. You can make Synchro 8s in this deck off of your 4s. You can have like a Researcher and your Raptite, or you can have Analyzer and a Fossil Monster. You can make Boardload Savage pretty easy in this deck. We're also going to be running one Raptite, and we're going to be running one Dragite. Drageye, of course, being a good going second card. Sometimes it's good going first because there's a spell negate if you have the small Drageye in graveyard. And then Raptite being the Excavate's a special summon, which is good for extenders. And we're actually going to be running one Naturia Beast. Naturia Beast being the bane of this format. There's so many decks that are going around with spell cards, like Sky Striker. If Sky Striker sees Nat Beast, what are they going to do? I mean, I guess they can Widow Anchor it if they're lucky, but you're not going to be able to activate Mystic Mine or Nat Beast. You're not going to be able to activate... Actually, even if they activate Widow Anchor, Nat Beast would just negate the Widow Anchor. So basically, Sky Striker just hard loses a Nat Beast, which I love. It's a great card. And also, just most decks can't. Despia basically would hard lose to it also. But that's our Synchro lineup. Now we're just going to go off into the Link monsters, which we only have 2. We have 1 Cross Sheep, and we have 1 Apo. Cross Sheep is kind of good in this because we're able to at least get some Link materials off, use Fossil Fusion under Cross Sheep, and then we can Monster Reborn another monster, and we can basically, if we go into like a Skullbone, and we have like another level 4 in our graveyard, we can basically go into Gallant Granite because if Monster Reborn's the other level 4, go into Gallant Granite, continue playing. Apo is a alright going first card. This is like a flex slot in my opinion because Apo is strong, but I don't think monster effects are super prevalent in this format. There's a lot more spell effects, so I think Nat Beast is more important on getting out than like an Apo per se. But you can still make like a 3-mat Apo, a Nat Beast, and either a Dragite or a Borreload Savage on first turn. Usually this would be like the Link Zone, and you would have it like this. And usually the Borreload Savage would have the Cross Sheep attached to it. So you'd have 1 Omni Negate, 3 Monster Negates, and unlimited Spell Negates, which is usually more than enough to close out something. Unfortunately, it hard loses to kind of like a Dark Ruler or a Droplets. Besides those 2 cards, it just plays through most everything. They can't really out this. It's very difficult. Unless they have like a Kaiju or something. But yeah, that's the deck profile. So that's the whole entire extra deck. I'm not sure. Let me... You know what? I'll give you guys a test hand so you guys can see what this deck can do. The combos are non-linear to say the least. They can be very... You kind of have to fly by the seat of your pants, to say the least. You have to figure out what you can possibly do based upon the hand, whether you have Adamancipators in rotation. If you don't, how do you get them into rotation? Do you have Fossil Fusion? Are you going second? There's a lot of things that can be contemplated with this deck. I like it because of that fact and the ability that it is flexible in all these things. A Fossil Fusion from plus a Time Stream, if you're going second, can usually close out a lot of things, as long as you have a rock monster in your graveyard. Or able to get one, which is kind of easy if you have like a Doki Doki or like a Kwaki. But besides that, the deck has multiple play lines that I can go through and is quite strong, I'd say. So let's do a test hand. So we have Shell Knight, Time Stream, Weathering Soldier, Read Analyzer, and Rock Band Xeno Guitar. These are the sort of hands that are pretty... Unfortunately, they're kind of bad in this case. Usually the Weathering Soldier, you want to keep it in deck, or you might want to mill it. Shell Knight being a similar thing, and Time Stream being a soft brick. Xeno Guitar is alright if we have a way to get it out of our hand. Of course, Analyzer is the only way that we can play right now. So we normally Analyzer, we would activate the effect to mill, or to excavate. So we hit, ooh, that's actually like kind of nuts to say the least. So we hit a Flint Cragger. Flint Cragger being the thing that will allow us to play through everything. So Flint Cragger will go off now. It will allow us to discard a card. So from here, what we can do is we can either... So what we would probably do is just discard Weathering Soldier. And then we get to send from our deck to the grave. Or from our extra deck, we're going to send a Skullgar. What we can do from here is now we can activate Weathering Soldier's effect, and we get to add a monster or a card that specifically lists Fossil Fusion in its text. What we're going to do is we're going to add a Miracle Rupture, actually. So we kind of fixed our hand now. Then this is actually like pretty strong, I'd say. So now we can banish the Skull Geos. We can add a Fossil Fusion. And now we have our whole combo line, which is kind of funny to say the least. So from this, what we could do is we can activate Fossil Fusion. Well, it really depends. So we have Analyzer plus Flint Cracker. Unfortunately, that's 7, so this is a weird hand. We can't get the extra draw off Miracle Rupture because we don't have enough monsters in the graveyard to be able to activate the Fossil Fusion yet. So what we could do is we can link off the Flint Cracker and the Analyzer for a Cross Sheep. Then we can activate Fossil Fusion. From Fossil Fusion, we're going to go into a Skull Bone. Then we're going to activate Cross Sheep's effect, Monster Reborning the Analyzer. Now we have 2 level 4s on the field. What we can do from here is we can activate Miracle Rupture. We're going to send a Revival Golem, and then we're going to draw 1. So I'm going to shuffle the deck and then just draw 1, for example. So draw 1. Yo, this hand's cracked now. The fact that we went through that, and if they didn't have the interruption for that very first monster, we would just, that's game. We just keep on going. It's kind of nuts. So then we activate Revival Golem, reviving Revival Golem. What we can do is we can Analyzer plus Revival Golem for Granite. Then you can activate Granite, taking off the Analyzer. We're going to add Seeker in this case. Then what I would probably do is I would activate Time Stream at this point. And we're going to swap the Skull Bone and go into a Skull Knight. And then we're going to banish the Skull Bone, and we're going to go into another Time Stream. And then we're going to activate Time Stream again, swapping the Skull Knight into a Skull King. Skull King now being a graveyard steal on their turn, which is kind of good. That's one kind of interruption that we have now. What we can do now is we can special Researcher. I'm going to activate Researcher's effect. We're going to mill the 5. So I'm going to have to move all these cards out of my way. So we're going to do, Seeker, Supplier, Soldier, Signs, Doki Doki. In this case, I would probably choose Supplier to get the extra card to hand. And then from Supplier, we're going to add ourselves the Kawaki Meru Guardian. And these all go back into the deck. So now we're at 4 cards in hand. We have Xenoguitar, Shell Knight, Seeker, and Guardian. What we can do now is we can synchro these off into a Raptite, and then Raptite effect, excavating 5 again, which is going to be Xenoguitar, Signs, Analyzer, Supplier, and a Flint Cracker. In this case, I'd probably go for Xenoguitar. Gives us level 4 access on the field. Then what we can do is what I'd probably do is I would link off the Granite, the Cross Sheep, and the Xenoguitar, which is going to let us get into a 3-mat Apo at the moment. And then off of this, we're going to activate Seeker. We're going to special Seeker, so now we can go into a Synchro 8 if we wanted to. We can activate Seeker's effect. We can do the 5 again. So we get Seeker, Rupture, Guardian, Researcher, and Tackle Crusader. So I would probably bring out Guardian, because that's just a monster negate now. And then we can put these back into the deck. And finally, what we can do is we can synchro off the Seeker and the Raptite, going into a Savage Dragon, and we can attach the Cross Sheep. So it's all right. This is an all right board. I had a kind of bad hand, and I was still able to make this through my plays, which is pretty impressive. We went through most of our deck, to say the least, and we also kind of have follow-up. So in our graveyard, we have Raptite, Seeker, Granite, Golem, we have Xenoguitar, Researcher, Supplier. We basically have a whole bunch of stuff. what we can do is, if the Skull King is destroyed by card effect or battle, what we get to do is we actually get to add back Fossil Fusion the next turn. And then what we can do is we can fuse using the Xeno Guitar, Foolish Burial, the Shell Knight, get ourselves, or like we can Foolish Burial, well, we have Shell Knight in hand. We can just Foolish Burial something, like attack the Crusader and just continue to play. So we have follow-up if they destroy the Skull King, and we also have, we have one Omni Negate, we have a Graveyard Steal that we would just pitch a card, which, The funny thing is the fact that it says you can target one monster in your opponent's graveyard, and it's a discard. The discard is not cost. So what we would do is we would actually discard the Shell Knight next turn to steal something in their graveyard. Then Shell Knight's effect would go off, and that would actually get us into the, where is it? This would get us into the Gaia Plate, which is just our third turn OTK potential, which is nuts. Then we also just have a monster negate by just revealing a rock at the end of the turn. We have the Omni, and then we have 3 monster negates. So if you play your cards right, this board definitely would like give a lot of decks problems. But this is just one example. This is just a test hand on a really bad hand, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this shows the potential of the deck and what fossils allow the Adamancipator strategy to do now without the prank kids, and I hope you all enjoyed. And tune back in. I'm gonna probably post another deck profile sooner or later, rather sooner than later, and look forward to that 100 subscriber video or special. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.